The Japanese Grand Prix was held yesterday, with Max Verstappen taking another win and Red Bull securing its Constructors' Championship. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to break down the Japanese Grand Prix from Sunday and just go into detail and discuss a little bit about what happened throughout the race and what some of my thoughts are. If you do enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe because we will be doing this for almost every race. And if you have any comments to add, make sure to leave them down below in the comment section. And with that, let's jump into it. The Japanese Grand Prix was full of, well, not so exciting moments. In fact, the most exciting part of the race was probably the opening lap where there was a ton of contact. But before we get into the contact, I want to touch upon how both McLaren cars, Norris and Piastri, were very aggressive off the start against Max Verstappen. Although Max was starting on pole position, we had Oscar Piastri in second and Norris in third. And Max quickly went to cover off Oscar to the right of the track, which left the outside wide open for Norris to try to take Max along the outside. Now, while Max Verstappen was busy covering off Oscar Piastri before the first turn, Lando Norris charged up the outside because they knew that their only chance at winning this race would be to overtake Max right at the beginning. And although this didn't end up working, with Norris now being in second and Piastri falling down to third, this was still a very aggressive show from McLaren and showed that they aren't afraid to go elbow to elbow with Max Verstappen, basically. I don't know if Max was expecting this type of fight from the McLaren drivers, and who knows how it would have continued if there wasn't a safety car due to the combat from further down the field. And speaking of contact, Checo Perez had an absolutely horrendous day, which started right at the very beginning of the race. Due to some contact he had with Lewis Hamilton before the first turn, and some other debris that was flying off cars further back, there was a safety car at the end of the first lap. This completely destroyed his race because Checo Perez now had front wing damage, so he had to pit at the end of the first lap to change his front wing. And due to an incorrect pit entry under safety car, he then received a 5-second penalty, which put him further down the grid once he had to serve that penalty. But before he had a chance to serve that penalty, he ended up nose diving on Magnussen and hit him and got another 5-second penalty. Or would have gotten a 5-second penalty if he wouldn't have retired the car. I think Perez believes that when people see that Red Bull nose, they're just going to dive out of the way, because he did this exact same move last week in Singapore when he dive bombed on Albon at the end of the race and didn't end up having to serve a penalty because it didn't essentially affect his race. And he tried the exact same thing this week, both times actually doing and causing much more damage to the other drivers than to himself. Sure, you could argue that now he had to retire the car, but he was already down after having had to pit in the first lap and was trying to work his way back up. And being so impatient, this might have caused him a good chance at points. Now, this of course leads to speculation that his seat is under risk. And who comes to mind now when we think of Red Bull? Well, Liam Lawson. Lawson's been having an amazing run with AlphaTauri, and just this week, AlphaTauri announced that they had signed Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda to be their drivers for next year. So where does this leave Lawson? Well, there has been some rumors that he may be promised the Red Bull seat in 2025, but this is just a rumor and is nowhere near confirmed. And the fact of the matter is that Lawson's been driving incredibly in that AlphaTauri. And with Perez putting in performances that are simply not to the standards that they should be for the car that is as dominant as it is, he is in jeopardy of losing that seat pretty soon. Does this mean Lawson's going to be the one that fills that Red Bull seat? Absolutely not. But if he keeps giving these wonderful performances, then they're surely going to live to give him a chance, I would hope. And frankly, it'd be a chance that he deserves and has earned. But besides the Red Bull camp, we also have the Mercedes camp. And there has to be some friction between those two drivers at this point. Lewis Hamilton was visibly upset last week when none of the team members or the mechanics showed up to celebrate his third place podium because they were all focused on George having binned the car right at the end and now not having been able to be on the podium. But in all fairness, it doesn't really matter what the other driver does because there's two drivers on every team. And Lewis Hamilton was right there behind George, ready to take that podium, so he deserved his spot on the podium. Fast forward to this week, right near the beginning of the race, George Russell does a move on Hamilton while giving him a little bit of space. It wasn't too aggressive, but right through the next straight with the DRS activated, Hamilton overtakes Russell again, this time not leaving quite as much room. The strategists at Mercedes did the smartest thing they could by quickly deciding to pit Hamilton so that they could give them alternate strategies and make sure there wouldn't be any fights. However, this only worked for so long because they later caught up to each other and again they were bumping elbows. Now, this was okay until the end of the race when they were still on separate strategies. Russell having opted for the 1 stop while Hamilton was on a fresher set of tires, having opted for a 2 stop. And with Hamilton quickly gaining on Russell, there was surely going to be another fight about to happen. But the problem wasn't necessarily these two, it was that Sainz was catching up to Hamilton, who was behind Russell, on a set of even fresher hard tires. Hamilton quickly told the team to let him pass George Russell so that he could go on, having much more pace in fresher tires, while George Russell tried arguing that the smartest thing to do would be to do exactly what Sainz did to them last week and have George Russell give DRS to Hamilton to defend against Sainz until the end of the race so that then they would swap positions, letting Hamilton by and George Russell still finishing in 6th behind him. The team didn't agree with Russell's thinking and told him it was an instruction to let Hamilton pass. So team orders 100%. They tried to cover it up a little bit later on by telling Hamilton to slow down to give DRS to Russell, but this lasted about 1 lap because Sainz quickly overtook Russell as he was a sitting duck on those old hard tires. You could hear that George was visibly mad, and I would have loved to be in that debrief session after the race to hear that conversation between those teams, strategists, and drivers. I think Mercedes needs to be careful going forward because there's definitely going to be some friction, and who knows, maybe we'll have a repeat of a Rosberg-Hamilton situation. I don't know, but we have to wait and see because only time will tell. For now, tread with caution. There's definitely something brewing there in those garages. Just like last week, we can touch on how Sargent once again didn't really have a great race. But more than that, he also managed to hit Bottas, which ended up ending Bottas' race, who in all fairness wasn't doing too well because he had gotten contact in the first lap. But still, Sargent 5-second penalty, later on had to retire from the race. He is the only one without a seat for next year, and I think there's not much that he's doing to secure a position. His only chance at a seat would be this Williams seat that he's currently holding, and he isn't really giving any results. And again, this wouldn't be an issue, but alongside him is Alex Albon, who you can see is putting in everything that he can and getting any point that he can whenever there is a point available to be gotten. Now sure, it's not fair to compare a rookie to Alex Albon, who has years of experience, has hardships behind him, and he's just in the form of his life at the moment. But at the same time, you could argue that Oscar Piastri is a rookie against Lando Norris, and he's absolutely killing it. So Logan Sargent, I think, needs to pick it up, or else he's most likely not going to be on the grid next year. And since we're talking about Piastri as a rookie, he just signed a contract until 2026 with McLaren this week. Now, he fully deserves this contract, and he has been putting up amazing performances for a rookie. So congratulations, Oscar. I can't wait to see what you're going to do. He's definitely going to have a great career ahead of him if they can provide him with a solid car. And I, as a Ferrari fan, can say that I am happy that nothing really happened to Ferrari. They started off well. They had a semi-mediocre race. They had great pace. They didn't mess up their pit stop strategies, which, good for them. That's a rarity. I don't want to be overly optimistic, but these past couple races, I have been surprisingly impressed with the strategy and the way they're going about their business. So, good job, Ferrari. Keep it up. Nothing more to add. The guys did great. Now, when I mentioned Mercedes and team orders, this could also be a potential problem in the future for McLaren. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that right now Lando Norris is their top driver. But Piastri's pretty good. And I mean pretty good. He's been doing very well for a rookie, which again is why he just signed this contract until 2026. And so far this year, although Lando Norris has a much better race pace, there's no question about that. But anytime there's been team orders, they've always helped Lando directly and harmed Oscar in one way or another. He hasn't voiced any concerns about this. There's been no issues, but it's inevitable that as a driver, at some point, you don't want to be giving up your position, especially when it's for those high spots. In Japan, Oscar was second when the team ordered him to swap positions with Lando, who was in third. Now, okay, you may say there's not a huge difference between second and third, but Oscar had never been on the podium before. And I'm sure as a young rookie, the one thing you want to do is fight and try to go for that win. And although unfortunately this year a win is almost impossible, because of Max Verstappen, second place is essentially a win. It must be heartbreaking during a race to be told that you're not allowed to fight for the position that you've been dreaming of since you were a kid because you have to swap with your teammate. Now, in all fairness, Lando would have passed him on track. He had much better pace. He was about 16 seconds up on him afterwards with that stint. But the way they're going about this is a bit risky in my opinion. There's a very good chance that this could lead to potential problems, and I'm sure nobody wants that because they have a great driver pairing at the moment. Now, I'm not sure if Oscar was just tired or overwhelmed, but he didn't seem too thrilled after the race. And again, that might be that he's just hard on himself and he wanted more out of himself and out of the car. But I do want to keep an eye on this in the future to just see how the friction between them evolves, because if Oscar keeps putting up great performances, and Lando is a great driver, but if he doesn't win, because that essentially is the one thing he doesn't have yet as a driver, is that win, then I think there could be some potential issues there. Hopefully not, but we will see. We'll keep an eye on that and look towards the next couple races. And if it's a shock to anybody, which I don't think it really is, the Max Verstappen podcast was back this week, having won the race. He pretty much dominated the whole weekend. There's not much more to say. He started on pole, had the fastest lap, finished 18 or 19 seconds ahead of the second place driver, Lando Norris. So I don't think it was too stressful of a weekend for him. I'm happy that they ended up winning the Constructors' Championship, the second consecutive one, in large part again due to Max Verstappen. And you could see that Max was driving with a little bit of vengeance and wanted revenge for last weekend, because people were saying that due to the technical regulations they might have nuked the Red Bull car a little bit. He wanted to clearly showcase that this was not the case, and that he still had the pace and that car itself was still a rocket ship. Great result for Max Verstappen, a great result for McLaren as a team, finishing second and third, their first double podium with this driver pairing, and surely not their last. And great result for Red Bull, a 6th Constructors' Championship and a 2nd consecutive. That's what you love to see, and I mean, as much as we may hate that the sport has been semi-boring this year, you can't deny the fact that Red Bull and the mechanics and everybody back at the factory just build an absolutely incredible car that's destroying the rest of the field. So hate the driver, hate the car, whatever, but they deserve that Constructors' Championships because they were clearly the best constructed this year. So congratulations to Red Bull. That's it for this race in Japan. There wasn't too many surprises, weren't too many great fights, but it did secure Red Bull's Constructors' Championship. Max Verstappen did get 26 points, and he has a chance at winning the Drivers' Championship in the sprint race on Saturday in Qatar. So that's next week, and Saturday the Grand Prix will be in Qatar, and we will definitely be breaking down that race as well. So make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you'll be notified when that video does drop after the race next week. And on top of that, if you want to see my live tweets during the race, make sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll put it up on the screen and down below in the comments. And that way, if you have anything to add, you can just respond to me and we can have a discussion on there as well. That being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.